Hello, my name is Marty Windle and welcome to the SBL Guru podcast. What we're going to talk about today is strategy in real life, where we take elements of the SBL syllabus and we try to apply them in real life companies or real life organizations. So what we're going to look at today are the ethical areas of the syllabus which come under section A of the SBL syllabus. And we're going to apply them to a company which I'm sure you're familiar with. The name of that company is Uber. So what we're going to do in this podcast is we're going to explore Uber's ethical challenges, from driver treatment to labor rights to data privacy and regulatory compliance. We'll discuss these challenges and how they align to corporate social responsibility expectations and how they've impacted on Uber's reputation. So let's take you right back to the start, to 2009, when Uber was founded and where they revolutionized urban transportation. The model was simple but groundbreaking. An app was used which allowed users to request rides from nearby drivers. As Uber expanded rapidly, it encountered a wide range of ethical issues. One of the first major challenges Uber faced was around the treatment of its drivers. Uber classifies them as independent contractors rather than employees, which exempts it from providing traditional employment benefits such as health insurance, paid leave, or retirement contributions. So in the SBL syllabus, as part of the IFAC principles, we always talk about accountants should be acting with integrity. And sometimes you've got to question whether Uber was acting with a high level of integrity. So in 2020, California was quite upset with the way which Uber was classifying its contractors. And what they did was introduce legislation which meant to protect the gig workers by ensuring they received the same rights as employees. Uber, along with other gig economy companies, resisted the change, ultimately spending $200 million to support Proposition 22, which exempted them from complying with these regulations. Now, Uber argues that the contractor model is good for employees. It allows drivers to have a lot of flexibility, and that does resonate with some drivers who like the freedom of setting their own schedules. However, many drivers see it differently. They argue that flexibility comes at a cost. That cost is unpredictable incomes, long hours with no benefits, and the inability to collectively bargain for better pay and conditions because they don't have or are not members of a union. Consider the story of Yolanda Chavez. She's a full-time Uber driver in Los Angeles. She recently shared publicly that while she enjoys the freedom that Uber provides, she struggles to make ends meet because of the volatility in her earnings. With no healthcare coverage and no guaranteed wages, Yolanda and thousands of drivers like her have been caught in a precarious work environment. Now, in the SBL syllabus, we talk a lot about corporate social responsibility. Do good things, don't cause any harm. You've got to question whether Uber is acting with good corporate social responsibility. Are they acting fairly? Because CSR isn't just about the company's bottom line, it's also about how companies treat its stakeholders, including their workers. Uber's approach to its drivers seems at odds with the growing expectation that companies take care of their workers beyond their minimum obligations. Let's take a deeper look at another area that is potentially an ethical issue in relation to Uber. Now, that is in terms of labor rights in the gig economy, which is central to one of Uber's key ethical controversies. In a traditional company, workers are entitled to certain protections: a minimum wage, health benefits, paid time off, and in particular, the right to unionize. However, gig workers often find themselves in a legal grey area where these protections are either diminished or absent altogether. This has often led to legal challenges for Uber. And in the UK, a group of Uber drivers argued they should be classified as workers and not independent contractors. In a landmark ruling in the UK, it meant that drivers were entitled to a minimum wage, paid leave, and other worker protections. However, Uber argued that drivers prefer the independence that comes with their contractor status. In response to this ruling, Uber did make some concessions, such as providing a guaranteed minimum wage during driver hours and holiday pay. However, these changes only applied to the UK, highlighting the variability in Uber policies in different countries around the world. Uber has often been criticized for its legal strategies, which in some cases have led to short-term victories, but sparked a global debate about workers' rights. Worker advocacy groups argue that Uber creates a model which is a new form of exploitation where drivers are responsible for the risks and the costs associated with the job, such as car maintenance and insurance, but without any of the protections or stability that come from formal employment. The question is, should Uber do the right thing? Should they be more focused on corporate social responsibility as part of their underlying philosophy? Should they give some concessions to their workers on a global basis? Let's look at a third element in terms of ethics and social responsibility. Let's turn our attention to the idea of data privacy and data security. As a tech company, Uber collects vast amounts of data. Every time you request a ride, Uber logs your location, your destination, your payment information, and your personal details. While this data is essential for the operation of the platform, it does pose significant privacy risks. Now, in 2016, Uber suffered a major data breach which exposed the personal information of 57 million users and drivers. What made things worse was not the breach, but Uber's response to the breach. Instead of disclosing the breach, Uber paid the hackers $100,000 to delete the data and keep quiet. The cover-up lasted over a year until it was revealed in 2017. Now, in the SBL exam, we talk about accountants must always act with professional behavior. And you've got to question whether Uber, in hiding the hack, were they acting with professional behavior? Were they acting in a professional way? And that's a key element of ethical compliance. This disclosure that they'd hidden the information did lead to a major public outcry. It resulted in fines, lawsuits, and a significant blow to Uber's reputation. Now, from a corporate social responsibility or ethical perspective, it is a major failure. Data privacy isn't just a legal requirement, it's also an ethical obligation. You've got to do the right thing and provide transparency, especially for your customers. Companies have an ethical duty to protect the personal data of the customers and to be transparent when things go wrong. When Uber hid the information, it shows a disregard for that duty and it eroded public trust. It shows they were not acting at a basic level of ethical compliance or social responsibility. Fourth element we're going to talk about today is regulatory compliance and corporate governance. If we look at Uber's approach to regulatory compliance, Uber's always had a very aggressive expansion strategy, which put it at odds with regulators around the world. In 2017, Transport for London refused to renew Uber's operating license, citing concerns about passenger safety, including its failure to report serious criminal offences and its use of greyball software, a program designed to evade regulators. The decision sparked a legal battle which Uber were fighting to restore its license. So again, the ethical behavior of Uber is not in line with acceptable levels of integrity and professional behavior, and they were deliberately not providing transparency to the UK government. They did eventually regain their license in London, but only after agreeing to improve its governance and oversight. However, this is far from an isolated incident. There have been many occasions when they've been operating without the necessary permits, flouting local taxi laws, and disregarding local labour protections. Once again, when we talk about ethics and CSR, it's not just acting legally, it's also about building trust with your stakeholders, especially customers, employees, and communities. Definitely Uber had a history of not working with the regulatory authorities, not working with their stakeholders, more focused on self-interest rather than stakeholder interest. So when we reflect on Uber as a company, we can see that a lot of time they did not act with good ethical behavior, and they were weak in terms of their corporate social responsibility, in terms of their obligation to the stakeholders. So it's a major consideration for companies, and it's definitely had an impact. Some people don't even want to use Uber products because of the way they treat their workers and the way that they always act in their own self-interest. As society expectations evolve, companies like Uber will be forced to rethink their practices. Looking forward, Uber will have the opportunity to redefine its ethical stance and maybe take action, proactive action, on things like driver conditions and data security. Only by doing this will they be able to enhance their ethical reputation and show a real commitment to corporate social responsibility. So there we have it, some of the issues in relation to ethics and CSR for the Uber organization. This podcast is free, but please like and subscribe so it helps me to get this podcast to all the SBL students throughout the world. If you need more help with your SBL examination, I do offer a number of paid courses. I've got tuition courses, I've got revision courses, I've got my famous double mock course where you get 2 mocks based on the pre-seen case study in the exam. This has led to my students getting fantastic pass rates in the exam. These are all paid courses. If you want to find out more, just go to www.sblguru.com. You can find out details of all my courses. Good luck in your examination.